Doug Benefield, a Navy veteran and technology consultant, was a man defined by integrity and resilience. Born and raised in the rural heartlands, Doug was known for his loyalty to family, and after the tragic death of his first wife, he remained a pillar of strength for his young daughter. But Doug's life, which appeared steady, was hiding cracks. His whirlwind romance and marriage to Ashley, a much younger ballerina, soon began to show tensions that would unravel tragically. In Lakewood Ranch, a seemingly perfect suburban community, Doug and Ashley's marriage was anything but peaceful. Behind the polished facade of their home, unease simmered. Friends began noticing Doug's withdrawn expression and hesitations. Inside their home, a violent struggle would soon leave Doug dead from gunshot wounds. His body was found lying in a pool of blood, his injuries telling a tale of a desperate attempt to flee. Ashley, pale and shaking, knocked on a neighbor's door, claiming that Doug had attacked her. She said she shot him in self-defense. The crime scene was eerie. Overturned furniture and bloodstains painted a grim picture of the violent altercation. Doug's phone, cracked and face down, lay near an overturned photo frame of him and Ashley, a smile now seeming like a lie. A suitcase, packed and waiting, hinted at an interrupted escape. Yet Ashley's story had inconsistencies. No weapon was found near Doug, and there were no defensive wounds on Ashley, suggesting her claims might not be entirely truthful. Detective Evelyn Hayes, known as the Seeker, for her analytical mind and calm demeanor, was assigned to the case. As she investigated, she found Ashley's account to be questionable. Doug's injuries didn't align with self-defense, and neighbors described a relationship marked by frequent arguments. Close friends revealed Doug's concerns about his marriage, hinting at increasing isolation. Further investigation uncovered other figures linked to the couple: Ashley's mother, Alicia, who disapproved of Doug's influence, and Frank, Doug's business partner, who had a falling out with Ashley. Ashley's accusations of abuse seemed inconsistent with Doug's character. Her claim that he attempted to poison her or threatened her lacked evidence, and a letter she had written about her fears appeared fabricated, with events mentioned that didn't align with Doug's whereabouts. Detective Hayes began to suspect that Ashley's story was a carefully constructed narrative to cover up the truth. As Hayes dug deeper, the layers of deceit grew thicker. Every lead seemed to point to manipulation and motives beyond the marriage itself. In a case full of hidden truths and shifting stories, Hayes knew that to solve the mystery, she would need to peel back the layers and uncover the reality behind Doug Benefield's tragic death. Detective Hayes was relentless, dissecting each suspect's story to uncover their hidden connections to Doug. Alicia, Ashley's mother, seemed poised and calm, yet her overprotectiveness toward Ashley hinted at an obsessive side. Beneath Alicia's composed exterior, she harbored resentment toward Doug, viewing him as a barrier to her daughter's happiness. When asked about Doug, Alicia's answers were guarded, but a flash of defensiveness suggested deeper secrets. Frank, Doug's business partner, was more transparent but still carried his own burdens. He hinted at a falling out with Doug after he got married, possibly over business disputes he described as personal. Although Frank expressed genuine regret about Doug's death, he grew tense when probed on recent business dealings, hinting at unresolved issues between them. Detective Hayes could sense Alicia's resentment, Frank's lingering guilt, and Ashley's wavering story. As she questioned them, subtle shifts in body language and tone revealed deeper motivations. Alicia became visibly agitated when Hayes brought up Doug's distancing himself from Ashley, her demeanor icy as she insisted on her daughter's innocence. Hayes noted Alicia's clenched hands, a brief glimpse of the fury simmering below. In another interview, Frank avoided eye contact when Hayes asked about his last conversation with Doug, eventually confessing that Doug feared losing everything. This revelation pointed toward a strained loyalty, leaving Hayes wondering if Frank knew more than he let on. Each suspect was holding back, but as the evidence mounted, it painted a picture of betrayal and hidden motives. Hayes's suspicions focused on Ashley, but her conversations with Alicia and Frank indicated that each had reasons to feel threatened by Doug. The case took a decisive turn when Hayes uncovered a phone recording from the night of Doug's death. In the recording, Doug's pleading voice was met by Ashley's calm, calculated responses, a stark contrast to her defense of acting out of fear. Hayes's voice was firm as she played the tape in the interrogation room, revealing inconsistencies in Ashley's self-defense claim. With each piece of evidence, including Doug's packed suitcase and a hidden letter, Hayes dismantled Ashley's story. Her hands trembled as the detective outlined the trajectory of the bullet wounds, showing there was no defensive struggle. Ashley's calm mask cracked, and her gaze darted nervously. Her mother, watching from behind a one-way glass, gasped as Hayes's case unraveled. Hayes confronted Ashley, accusing her of orchestrating Doug's death to maintain control. For a fleeting moment, Ashley's emotions surfaced before settling into cold resignation. Finally, in a detached tone, she confessed, "I did what I had to." In her mind, Doug was an obstacle to her carefully constructed life, and she was determined to sever his influence, whatever the cost. The aftermath left deep scars. Doug's family mourned not just his death, but the bitter betrayal behind it. Friends, including Frank, were left questioning if they missed signs that could have saved him. Lakewood Ranch, once captivated by Doug and Ashley's romance, struggled with the unsettling truth that dark motives hid beneath their idyllic relationship. In court, Ashley appeared emotionless as her sentence was read, showing no remorse, only a steely resolve. Detective Hayes watched her, feeling satisfaction mingled with sorrow, knowing that betrayal and manipulation had driven this tragedy. For Hayes, the case was more than solving a murder. It was a sobering reminder of the destructive power of control and resentment. As Hayes left the courthouse, she reflected on the lives shattered by Ashley's decisions. The story of Doug's death would stay with her, a stark reminder that hidden darkness often requires just a spark to ignite a devastating inferno. In the summer of 2021, just days before her 24th birthday, Megan Newborough went missing from her family home in Nuneaton, England. On August 6th, she told her mother she was going to meet someone but didn't share many details. Expecting her back within hours, her family grew worried when she didn't return. By the following day, after multiple unanswered messages and calls, her family reported her missing. Megan, a young HR professional known for her kindness, had recently started dating Ross McCullum, a coworker at her brick manufacturing company. Although Megan's family knew little about him, she had spoken warmly of Ross, even mentioning his affectionate morning messages. The two had known each other for years, but had only recently begun a more personal relationship. Megan's sister Claire described her as happy and confident that night, further heightening the shock and despair when her family realized she was missing. Warwickshire police swiftly launched an investigation, tracking Megan's white Citroën C3 through local surveillance. A camera had last picked up her car around 9:50 p.m., just half an hour after she left home. Soon after, police visited Ross's house, where they found his living room in disarray, with items knocked over and suspicious wet spots that looked hastily cleaned. Dark smears along the baseboards caught officers' attention, raising their suspicions that something far more sinister had occurred. Ross was out at a nearby pub when officers called him, instructing him to return home. When confronted by the police, he responded with disturbing calm. After some initial questioning, he confessed, revealing that he had left Megan's body in a levee near the village of Woodhouse Eaves. Police quickly acted, sending officers to the location Ross described. Hours later, they found Megan's body in a patch of tall grass near a stone wall. A post-mortem revealed that Megan had suffered 14 cuts to her neck, though the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Her death devastated her family and sent shockwaves through the quiet town. As the investigation continued, more alarming details surfaced. Megan's car had blood matching her DNA on the passenger seat and exterior, along with a glove found nearby that held DNA from both Megan and Ross. Surveillance footage later showed Ross discarding evidence. Around 9:51 p.m., he had been caught on CCTV cameras at the Loughborough College Fitness Center, discarding several of Megan's personal items into 2 bins. He also changed his clothes, disposing of the blood-stained ones, as well as a towel and bed linen. In the weeks leading up to her death, Ross and Megan exchanged over 3,500 messages, revealing both an intense and increasingly troubling relationship. Ross, who reportedly struggled with ADHD, exhibited insecurity and aggression, especially surrounding issues of intimacy. He had often blamed his impotence on medication, which seemed to be a source of tension. Though their conversations began positively, Ross's tone had grown erratic, oscillating between affection and anger. The last time they met was at his home in Colville, where she had gone on August 6th, the final time she would be seen alive. Evidence mounted against Ross, from GPS data on Megan's phone tracing her path to his house, to the CCTV footage capturing him trying to cover his tracks. He had discarded Megan's phone in dense undergrowth near Hermitage Road, about a mile from his home. The sequence of actions, from her disappearance to his confession, painted a disturbing picture of premeditation. Ross's attempt to clean the crime scene and dispose of her belongings only underscored his awareness of his actions. During the trial, Ross's defense claimed that his actions were spontaneous, driven by mental health issues and his complicated relationship with Megan. However, the prosecution pointed to the evidence of his calculated attempts to erase any trace of the crime, arguing that this was no accidental or impulsive act. The cuts to Megan's neck, inflicted after she was already dead, suggested a level of brutality that could not be ignored. As the trial progressed, Megan's family shared their grief and spoke about her life, her kind nature, and her ambitions. Her colleagues and friends described her as a compassionate, thoughtful person who always put others first. In contrast, the prosecution highlighted Ross's aggressive behavior, revealing that he had attempted to mislead police and tamper with evidence in hopes of evading justice. Ultimately, Ross McCullum was found guilty of Megan's murder. His sentence brought some closure for her family, though it could never erase the pain of losing her. Megan's story serves as a tragic reminder of the potential dangers of trust misplaced and the sometimes hidden nature of people's darker sides. The Newborough family and the community of Nuneaton continue to mourn the loss of a young woman whose life ended far too soon. In East Point, Michigan, 17-year-old Zion Foster was known for her friendly nature and close bond with her mother. Growing up in a small, supportive community, Zion was a responsible, kind-hearted teenager, cherished by her family and friends. A key figure in her life was her cousin Jalen Brazier, who had been like an older brother to her. The two shared many family memories, and Zion trusted him deeply. However, this bond of trust would tragically be broken, leading to an unexpected betrayal that shocked her family and community. Zion went missing unexpectedly, prompting a desperate search by her loved ones and law enforcement. She was known to be reliable and respectful, making her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. Her mother, unable to reach her, immediately contacted authorities, setting off an extensive investigation. Police began by tracing Zion's lone steps and questioning those close to her. All leads were followed, and every possible contact was investigated to find the missing teenager. The investigation took a surprising turn when it was discovered that Jalen was the last person to see Zion. Initially, he claimed that after spending time together, they had gone their separate ways. This explanation seemed believable at first, as the two were known to have a strong, trusted relationship. However, inconsistencies began emerging in Jalen's story, which quickly drew police attention. His alibi seemed shaky, and his behavior started raising red flags among investigators. Upon further investigation, Jalen's phone records revealed that he had been in the area where Zion was last known to be. The police also found that he had driven in erratic patterns, which did not align with his original statements. Detectives noticed that Jalen's responses during questioning seemed rehearsed and evasive. This discrepancy, combined with his strange behavior, led authorities to suspect he might be more involved in Zion's disappearance than initially thought. Jalen was subsequently arrested, and under police interrogation, he confessed. According to his version, Zion had tragically died that night, although he claimed her death was accidental. Panicking, he had decided not to seek help but instead to dispose of her body, a choice that devastated Zion's family and friends. Jalen admitted to putting her body in a dumpster in Detroit, Michigan, hoping to avoid detection. The police launched a search to recover Zion's remains, combing through landfills and disposal sites. However, despite their exhaustive efforts, her body was never found, leaving her family in an agonizing state of limbo. The inability to recover her remains added to their grief, making it difficult for them to properly mourn and find closure. Jalen faced charges of lying to police and tampering with evidence. During the trial, he maintained that Zion's death was accidental, but the prosecution pushed for a more serious conviction. Zion's tragic story became a painful reminder to her community of how trust can be betrayed and how even the closest relationships can hold hidden dangers. Her family, left devastated, honors her memory, while her story continues to resonate as a heartbreaking tale of loss, trust, and betrayal. In a tragic case of betrayal and heartbreak, the disappearance and death of Zion Foster has left a lasting impact on her family and community. Zion, a young woman with a promising future, had been last seen with her cousin, Jalen Brazier, a person her family trusted. However, Jalen's actions after Zion's death not only shattered this trust, but revealed a disturbing lack of remorse that shocked all who followed the case. From the outset, Jalen claimed that Zion's death was accidental, yet the details were vague, and his subsequent actions suggested otherwise. Rather than seeking help or notifying authorities, Jalen chose to cover up the incident, going so far as to dispose of Zion's body in a dumpster. This heart-wrenching decision illustrated a chilling disregard for human life, as it stripped Zion's family of the opportunity to grieve and bury her with dignity. The investigation took a sharp turn when detectives noticed inconsistencies in Jalen's story. Initially, Jalen told police that Zion had left his company that evening to head home, yet his timeline didn't add up. Detectives, now suspicious, pressed him harder, uncovering a darker narrative. Eventually, Jalen cracked under the mounting pressure and confessed to being involved in Zion's death. He claimed it was an accident but remained evasive about the details. His refusal to fully cooperate left Zion's family with painful, unanswered questions about her final moments. The search for Zion's body became a central focus, with law enforcement scouring a landfill based on Jalen's claims. However, by the time authorities reached the landfill, the chances of finding her remains had diminished significantly due to the passage of time and regular waste collection cycles. Zion's mother, desperate for closure, could only watch in anguish as search efforts continued in vain. The absence of her daughter's body left an aching void, a reminder of how profoundly her life had been violated and disrespected. In court, Jalen's defense argued that he was a young man who had made a terrible mistake out of panic, emphasizing that his actions were not premeditated. However, the prosecution was unswayed. They highlighted his repeated lies to the police, his calculated steps to dispose of Zion's body, and the stark lack of remorse he displayed. For Zion's family, especially her mother, these actions were unforgivable. The betrayal was not only a personal one but a moral one, showing Jalen's complete disregard for Zion as both a person and a loved one. Jalen's sentencing, though a step toward justice, brought only bittersweet relief for Zion's family. Her mother, who had been a vocal advocate throughout the investigation, continued to champion Zion's memory and fight for justice. The community rallied around her, drawn to the strength she showed in the face of unimaginable grief. Zion's story became a haunting reminder of how betrayal can come from the most unexpected sources and the importance of persistence in seeking truth. The emotional toll of Zion's disappearance and death extended beyond her immediate family, affecting the entire community. Many were left grappling with the painful realization that danger and betrayal could be so close to home. Friends and neighbors mourned Zion, remembering her as more than a victim of a senseless tragedy, but as a beloved individual taken too soon. For Zion's mother, the journey toward healing has been challenging. With Zion's body never recovered, the sense of unfinished business lingers, and the hope for a proper goodbye remains elusive. Despite this, she has turned her sorrow into advocacy, working to support other families of missing and exploited children. In her heart, she knows Zion's memory will live on as a symbol of love, strength, and resilience, offering hope to others facing similar ordeals. Zion Foster's tragic story serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating impact of panic-driven decisions. Her family carries the weight of her loss daily, forever marked by the betrayal of someone they once held close. While justice was served in the courtroom, the true cost of Zion's death, a void that can never be filled, remains a painful reality for those who loved her. In honoring Zion's memory, her family moves forward, knowing that while her life was tragically cut short, her spirit will continue to inspire others in the fight against injustice. In a tragic case that shook a community, Rhonda Casto's life ended on the Eagle Creek Trail. Initially considered a tragic accident, her fall from a cliff raised suspicions, particularly among her family, who felt her fiancé, Stephen Nichols, was acting strangely. At Rhonda's memorial, his stoic demeanor sparked further doubts. Stephen soon moved away, taking their daughter, and later relocated to China, where he built a new life with a woman named Landy. However, detectives were quietly investigating. In 2015, upon his return to the U.S. for a wedding, Stephen was arrested for Rhonda's murder due to the persistent efforts of her family, who refused to let the case go cold. The state charged Stephen with murder, pointing to troubling evidence, including bruises on Rhonda's back, the nature of her fall, and his relationship with her younger sister, Melanie, who was only 16 at the time. This relationship, which Stephen admitted to under pressure, was a potential motive. The prosecution also claimed Stephen was involved in a separate incident involving a minor, further painting him as a dangerous figure. Stephen's defense argued that Rhonda's injuries suggested an accidental fall, and that she was battling depression, which they claimed could imply suicidal intent. Rhonda's family countered this narrative, insisting she was devoted to her young daughter and had no intention of ending her life. They believed Stephen's financial struggles, coupled with a life insurance policy he'd taken out on Rhonda, could have been a driving factor. Despite the intense trial, physical evidence linking Stephen to an intentional push was insufficient. Ultimately, the state accepted a plea deal for criminally negligent homicide. Stephen was sentenced to time served and 3 years on parole. Rhonda's family was devastated, feeling justice was denied. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made chilling comments that hinted at his possible involvement in Rhonda's death. He spoke hypothetically about ending her suffering if she'd survived the fall, stirring further suspicion. This tragedy not only took Rhonda's life but also left her family haunted, as they continued to search for the truth in a case that left their lives forever altered. In March 2021, the city of Eladi was shaken by a horrific tragedy that unveiled deep flaws in the justice system. The disappearance and death of 19-year-old Ajan Yalova left her family and friends devastated and highlighted issues like violence against women and police negligence. Despite her family's pleas, authorities initially dismissed their concerns, advising them to wait it out, even as they sensed something was terribly wrong. Ajan, a vibrant and dedicated fashion student, was known for her kindness, determination, and creativity. She was excited about the future and often shared glimpses of her dreams on social media. On March 18, 2021, she seemed especially happy, attending her classes and working her part-time job at a nail salon. But that night, as she was returning to her dorm, she vanished without a trace. Her family and friends grew increasingly alarmed when she didn't return. After attempts to report her missing, they were met with indifference by the police, who cited being overwhelmed with city protests as an excuse for inaction. Ajan's sister and loved ones persisted, determined to find her, yet were continually dismissed by authorities. The next morning, residents were horrified as human remains were discovered across the city, leading to the tragic confirmation that Ajan was gone. Her story became a rallying cry for justice, sparking conversations on the need for systemic change to protect women and ensure that families are taken seriously in their search for loved ones.